Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Australian Army Band Corps is Lieutenant Colonel Andrea McMahon. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony around Australia. During the ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors and students on behalf of the following schools. From New South Wales, Lura Public School and Tyes Hill Public School, and from Western Australia, Noronha Family School. Shortly, Australia's Federation Guard will dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier within the Hall of Memory. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. It provides a ceremonial presence during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries and for civil and military events, including those here at the Australian War Memorial. Historically, a catafalque party was a support for a coffin, and a catafalque party was appointed to guard the coffin from theft or desecration. Now, it performs a ceremonial role, honouring the dead. Once the Guard members enter the commemorative area, they will replicate the drill of a catafalque party placed around the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. Please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Boys and girls, please sit. The Australian War Memorial was a vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and other operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal George King. George King was born on the 13th of May 1891 in Beath, Scotland, to James and Margaret King. By the outbreak of the First World War, King had immigrated to Australia and was boarding in Curlewis, New South Wales, where he worked as a labourer. King enlisted for service in the AIF at Narrabri on the 6th of January 1916 and was posted to the newly formed 33 Battalion, then in camp at the Armidale Showgrounds. He embarked with his battalion from Sydney on the 4th of May aboard the transport ship Marathon, bound for England. The battalion spent several months training before sailing to France. At the end of November, the 33rd Battalion entered the front line for the first time. They spent the next several months rotating in and out of the front line and enduring the terrible winter of 1916-17, the worst winter Europe had seen for 40 years. The 33rd Battalion took part in its first battle at Messines on the 7th of June. The battalion, along with the rest of 9 Brigade, led the 3rd Division's assault and captured their objectives. The battalion held the newly won positions for several days afterwards and endured heavy German shelling, suffering heavy casualties as a result. During the occupation of the front line near Messines in July, King was wounded in the back and evacuated to the 1st Australian General Hospital in Rouen. He returned to the battalion, which was in rest positions in late August, and was promoted to Lance Corporal in early September. In the early hours of the 30th of September, the 33rd Battalion returned to the front line near Zonnebaker, relieving several British battalions. During the morning, the battalion suffered 3 fatal casualties, one of whom was King, who was struck in the chest by shrapnel. He was carried to the battalion's regimental aid post, where he died. He was 26 years old. King was buried near the railway at Zonnebaker, but in the ensuing fighting his grave was lost. Today he is commemorated on the Meningate Memorial in Ypres. His name is listed on the honour roll on my right, among more than 60,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal George King, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Party, present. Arms. Party, shoulder, arms.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. Thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and good evening.